Considering how prevalent Sonic fan games are, and how much of a common joke it is about how overly good they are, is it that surprising to believe that some developers would see how much effort they're putting into their game, realise they can't actually make any money off of it, and decide to just make their own IP? Well, I know at least 2 situations where that happened, between Freedom Planet and Spark the Electric Jester, and there's probably a few more that aren't quite as well known. Today though, we'll be looking at Mr.FondusBroMan's Serpentine mod, translating a Freedom Planet character into Sonic Robo Blast 2. I feel this is probably quite ironic, coming from a Sonic fan game turned original IP, then being modded into another ridiculously high quality Sonic fan game that never quite took that leap. Let's dive in. Serpentine falls into a character archetype you don't see all that often in SRB2. Wielding 2 plasma pistols, he is very much a classic style gunslinger. A very combat focused character, excelling especially from medium to long ranges. Every one of your abilities is somehow derived from either Serpentine's plasma pistols or from his robotic arms. Pressing spin will release a volley of energy shots in a vertical cone in front of you, decimating any enemy that stands in your way. It doesn't home like Fang's popgun does, as that's reserved for a different ability, but it works perfectly well as a quick attack for enemies are right in front of you. Presumably the cone shape it takes is to make up for your inability to aim vertically, as otherwise flying enemies could end up being an overly dangerous threat. It, like all of his attacks, also has the ability to break spikes, although that really doesn't come into play particularly often. Pressing custom 2 will release a rocket from your arm, which homes in on an enemy and destroys them in a large explosion. This is what the reticles you'll have been seeing are actually for, as these have some pretty extreme tracking on them, particularly good for the Metal Sonic fight. This comes at the cost of having to completely stop for a second while you release the rocket though, whereas the plasma pistols simply slow you down. This creates a fairly alright balancing game, where you need to decide between leaving yourself vulnerable while the rocket is being prepared, with the benefit of the stupidly strong tracking, or firing off a quick volley of shots with the downside of having no homing at all. Admittedly, this doesn't come into play unless you've accidentally let an enemy get literally right into your face. For bosses and almost every other situation, the rockets are always the best bet, but it's a concept that could potentially be expanded upon. Those abilities both work fine. I really have no genuine problems with them, but Serpentine's other 2 abilities could do with some more work. Pressing custom 1 will cause Serpentine to unload a huge salvo from both guns into the air before the shots fall back down and deal damage to anything they hit. Sounds cool, right? In theory, yes it does, but in practice it's completely useless. Not enough shots of fire to provide for consistent coverage of the surrounding area, and in the absence of any way to even vaguely aim your shots, it's complete potluck whether you actually hit something. Most of the time, I found enemies were able to simply walk through the affected area without actually getting hit. I can't see this being any worth at all in a boss fight, as you would need to be way too close to use this, and again, the missile attack is just way too good for this scenario to even justify getting that close. His double jump ability isn't as aggressively pointless as this, but I still feel it could be improved slightly. At the moment, Serpentine fires a bunch of plasma shots to the ground, allowing him to hover for a few seconds. Fine enough, but I think the ability could maybe do with being a bit more powerful. Serpentine doesn't have particularly great traversal options. I mean, this is literally his only ability that doesn't actively hamper your movement. And so while simply hovering might be alright for someone like Metal Sonic, where it can be extended for as long as you can maintain momentum, and it also has dash mode, Serpentine doesn't have any of that. I feel giving it a little upwards boost could be good to somewhat remedy this. I admit that this would start to drift away from his moveset in Freedom Planet, but as we get into his sprites, you might start to see that he could actually really do with moving away from that influence. Now, Serpentine's design is really cool. The arm is interesting and in the objective best colour scheme. I like the design of the plasma pistols, everything's good. Except Serpentine has exactly 0 rotation sprites, and I mean exactly none. No matter which angle you look at him from, the guy does not ever turn around. This obviously looks ridiculous when he's moving, because his sprites are moving left or right despite him actually moving forward. And then he doesn't even point the gun or rocket arm in the direction he actually fires them, so they just come out from somewhere on his back. There are some good things about the character. He actually has voice lines, something that's completely missing from most characters for one reason or another, So that's a positive that stops this category from being literally bottom of the barrel, but almost every character that isn't supposed to be a complete joke has at least some level of rotation. Yeah, this is just really bad. Overall, Serpentine has one pretty glaring problem. No matter how alright I think the moveset is, and how I think it's good that he actually has voice lines, any good points that I can give the character is negated by the fact he uses entirely rip sprites from a 2D game. Characters can use rip sprites if they work well, and so characters can get away with having no rotation sprites as part of the joke, but Serpentine doesn't use rip sprites well, and I'm fairly certain that he's supposed to be a serious character. Not very good. I can only give a 3 out of 10. I hope you enjoyed the video, and ciao.